He's very passionate about HTML. And oh my God, you're not going to believe this. He's like,
No way.
He's here.
Oh, yeah, brother. I've been going coast to coast, signing autographs and holding babies, and I just came here to say HTML is the way. Oh, yeah, brother.
So he's got to go.
Visit bad at CSO.
David, I'm bad at something. At CSS, you know it's not surprising, but today we are bad with friends. We have Dave Rupert on the show, aka Randy Standards, Bernie Standards, Barack Shadow Dom Obama, T Swiftinator, co-host of the Shop Talk Show, hacker extraordinaire, goofball, radcat, figuring painting nerd, and friend. Welcome to the show, Dave Rupert.
Hey, thank you for having me. It is good to be here.
You know it.
And I'm the perfect guest because I am bad at CSS.
Yes. Who's good at it? That's a question. Who's willing to stand up and say, I know all of CSS and I'm extraordinary at it?
Jen Simmons.
Yes.
I don't know if we could have Jen Simmons on the podcast because I would be very afraid to say anything around such royalty. I would be like, thank you. And she's like, sure. Like, thank you again.
She's very polite at correcting us on the Shop Talk Show when we say something inevitably wrong. So we do that weekly. So we'll just say, so yeah, she's very polite.
It's hard to be right all the time. And that's kind of what this show is like helping us do is we get to talk about what we were wrong about, which is like honest and great. And then, we'll learn something. I'll learn something from what you're bad at, inevitably. Mm-hmm. Well, what did you have a thing in your mind that you're just like, oh yeah, this is the first thing that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm bad at that.
I mean, should we just start today, like with what I did today, this morning?
Yeah.
Styling input type equals range. This is not entirely my fault because it sucks to do that.
Yes.
Okay. And somebody who works at a browser needs to fix it. So I'm just saying, but it is I know there's properties. I know there's some WebKit soup that gets mixed into the soup. I know Firefox sometimes respects the WebKit soup. I know you need the Moz soup in the soup, and I can never get it right. And I literally just never know what. I'm just like chucking properties. I'm just like, let's try this one. And then it is weird, like Moz range thumb and WebKit slider thumb need like different properties. Like one sets a background and a border and the other one does not. It just has a drop shadow or a box shadow. Cool, guys.
Nailed it.
Way to talk that one through, anyway, but it's weird. So
I feel like though when you ever styling most form sets, but range for sure is like that's like the deck is stacked against you kind of situation where you're like, I'm bad at the thing that is full of thorns and I'm not good at holding it because it hurts my hand. It's like it's not. You're just not going to be able to do it. It's just a little painful as you do it.
Yeah, and it's a lot of CSS. And maybe this is theoretical here, but a lot of it is like, how often do you do it? I only need to style a range input once every 3 years, so it's like not that often. And am I like, gosh, you know what? This needs a range input. I don't know. I really like abusing the range input and using it as like a interactive control, for whatever, making things go faster or slower or wider and smaller and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just, I wish it was just easier. I wish it was more.
How did you handle the validation of your ranges? That to me, whenever people talk about forms, then I'm always like, well, how'd you do validation? Because there's like visually validating it because that range, you can get pretty wild out there. It's not as traditional as some other validations.
Yeah. Well, so range is weird, right? It has the step attribute.
Right.
Which is cool because you can go like 0.1 and it'll like 0 to 1, it'll like basically have 10 steps. However, there's also like an 11th step because 0 is a step. And so if you're like divide by like make 4 segments, you're now 0 is a segment, and then you have to like steps -1 to make it 4 segments equal segments. God bless this mess. This is it's saying, and then I recently learned, like literally yesterday, somebody in the Shop Talk Discord was like, "Did you know input range accepts a data list, like a
Yeah.
and I was like, I'm sorry, what's going on? But it accepts data list and it'll draw little marks
Little
on
ticks. The
little
little
ticks.
ticks. Yeah.
I was this years old when I learned that too. My God.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can have a data list that like basically is like whatever the web's version of autocomplete that is just total abandonware, but it's fine. I hear it's getting better. I don't know. But data list, no, it's not. Shoot, that ruins my
I
life.
think that
That
thing
hurts
is
my
that's
heart.
like an. I just suggested it the other day for something. I was like, oh, we could use data list. Everyone's like, no, we're not gonna do that.
See, don't talk to web standards people. They like to get mad. They're like, oh no, that's a bad thing we did. Let's invent 10 new things. Let's not.
Oh, I was asking to style the data list. Actually, I was like,
I would
hey,
love to.
you're opening up all this other junk.
Yeah,
Open up the data list. Give me access.
that would be
And
awesome.
they're like, no.
Because it's really ugly in some browsers.
Yeah, it's not very desirable. It has all the functionality you want with like keyboard and all that sort of stuff, a fuzzy completion, but it can't match your brand. It's either light or dark if you do color scheme, and that's all you get.
Yeah, it's not that great. And then there's like this drop down carrot thing you have to kind of worry about or like think about, bleh, not my favorite.
Yep.
I was gonna say there is this other weird thing about input range with data list that draws the ticks is I think Chrome does it on the bottom, but Firefox or something does it on the top, draws the ticks on the top, which is just chef. Oh, it's a beautiful soup. This is soup. It's the best soup. we have made a good out of web soup, So
I have an active internal document and a GitHub issue asking for interop on the input type range, and for them to finish it. In my opinion, it's unfinished because here's another little thorny edge. Is you can put vertical on a slider.
Oh yeah,
and it goes vertical.
Oh, yeah.
Like cool. Now I'm like making music. Pump up the jams. But the ticks, they don't come with you. They're just like, oh, no one will do vertical with the data list.
Wow.
Wait, where do the
And
ticks?
you're like, no, here I am.
Do they go
They're
away?
just not there. Yeah,
So
they're just gone.
okay.
It's like all that work is just toast. You're like, as soon as you make it vertical, they're like, nah, I'm not going to draw that anymore for you.
I was kind of hoping in this sinister way that the ticks stayed kind of like positioned to where they'd be. Everything was horizontal and they went vertical. They're like, no, we're just gonna stay here. We're good.
Just give a mustache to the slider.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, sliders are packed with all. So like another one, this one bit me more than once before I realized what was going on. And this is totally a CSS thing, like those special selectors, that Moz selector, those WebKit selectors that you're talking about, range thumb, or whatever they are. You can't use a comma and group the styling of WebKits and Moz's together. It's ridiculous. Because if a browser doesn't understand one, it just chokes on the selector group. And so I think you can use has now because has is forgiving, but then I'm like, I don't want to use has. That's like totally inappropriate. And is and where, I don't think did it either. Anyway, so yeah, you have to break them out, which means you have to duplicate your code, which means I'm going crazy because it's not like I can put a class on these pseudo elements. I have to target them individually and repeat myself. It's very frustrating.
Is or has might be a good choice, but that is weird. It just bails, right? It's just like, I'm out. Yeah.
That's one of those things where you like want to die when you don't know that's what's happening. You're like, I have it all listed. I'm being a good CSS developer. They're all grouped together, and then it's just not working, and it looks right. And then that's like when you Stack Overflow it after like 100 of them, and then you finally go down to one comment that has like 1 vote or 0 votes. That's like, by the way, and you're like, why is this the last one?
Yeah, it's at the bottom. It's always at the bottom, and it's like, surely that's not true. No, surely, surely that's not true. And then you test it, and you're like, oh, 100% true. That's wow.
Josh Como has an article on it because it bit him, and he was diligent enough to be like, let me heal the rest of the world with my blog post telling you that you can't use a comma.
That's funny. I knew or I discovered it didn't work again. Like I rediscovered that it didn't work, but I guess I never really understood why. But I guess if it's bailing,
It's the forgiving versus the non-forgiving selector list. Come on, this is computer science CSS 101.
yeah,
Not.
most computer language have forgiving and unforgiving as the like. Oh, you can't use that variable. That's a forgiving variable, and this is an unforgiving situation.
So, okay, another cool thing with input type range. I'm so glad you brought this one up. There's so many interesting. I just was hacking on one yesterday, and what I asked about was you know the attribute function in CSS that will grab the value of an attribute off of a DOM node. Super cool. And then the V3 of it, or maybe spec 3, I don't know. Anyway, the one that hasn't made it anywhere is like the cool attribute one that you can typecast them as a number, or like you can type the value that's inside of it and use it to concatenate something. So right now, if you use attribute, it's just always a string, and I don't think you can concatenate it, or there's like a couple of weird rules. But if we get this new attribute one with the input type range, you could, so like I have a styled input type range that uses custom properties to know how much it's full, to show the like filled amount, but I have to use JavaScript because I need to do some math. I need to take the current value and divide it by the max and times by 100 or some crap like that. And if we had the attribute function, you could do it all in your CSS. It could read the value off the input as a number, put it in a calc, and no JavaScript, custom slider fill goo with whatever goo you want to fill your track, and boom, it'd be right there. And then I go look it up. I'm like, where's this at? It's got tons of stars on Chromium. We want that. Everybody wants this feature. And then security shows up, and they're like, oh yeah, you want that attribute function? Well, someone could make a URL that pings their server and just takes all the attributes, puts them on the end. And now you've got data tracking from CSS. You got people sniffing your inputs over the wire.
That's the problem with adder, like as a whatever.
Yeah, it's a brand new attacking vector that's like actually got a lot of vectors that it adds. Yep.
Why is all the coolest stuff like it's like, wow, that's so awesome, and it also is the most dangerous stuff? Is it like that in real life too? Like the stuff
I don't know why they're just like JavaScript
awesome.
is doing this. They're like, oh, CSS will never do something insecure like that. Go use JavaScript.
Meanwhile, cookies.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff. You're like, why are you protecting? There's another weird one too. It's like prefers reduced data.
Yeah.
Is also behind the security thing. They're like they're really timid about adding new vectors for tracking you. And I'm like, can you focus more on the smorgasbord of JavaScript's attacking vectors and a little less on these innocent ones over here that are like the niche of the entire planet will know how to do, versus this one that's all over Hacker News? All right, whatever. I'm gonna give up.
Nobody's going to use the adder function for bad things because no one's going to be writing CSS. It's only going to be like a handful of CSS nerds who are like, look what I can do. And then everybody else is going to be like, I'm just going to keep hacking people in JavaScript. It's fine.
Yeah. Let's just disable the style APIs for third-party scripts, and I think we'd all be stoked.
I'd feel so safe.
Yeah, I would.
Funny. Another thing with input type range, my question to you is, when you were styling it, did you do the proxy slider, or did you target each of the thumbs and each of the thingies and like fully style the input type range?
Let's see. I want to make it invisible. So my thing was like creating like a dial input. Like I know you've built one like that's in Chrome or whatever, right? Like DevTools, the arc,
Yeah, the angle tool. Yeah.
I wanted to make a web component that like is sort of like a guitar knob, like web component.
Rad. Yes.
And because there's a few things I want to kind of make with that. Like I have this little. It was actually a Google project called from the Magenta team that Monica DeQuenzo used to work on. It kind of AI exploration-y TensorFlow team. But it was like this kind of lo-fi generator. It was really cool.
Yeah. I remember that. That was a sweet app. Yeah.
it was very cool, but using it is not so great. Well, it's great. It is just it's like a very like locked in experience. It's very like go like you're watching kind of a flash app almost. It's a canvas, but and you're clicking around and adding things, and a cat shows up. It's great, but I kind of want the more like rudimentary version of it, almost like just like a guitar rack, like 7U units, like this that have knobs that I can play and tweak. And so started building that and like stripping down the magenta work, and it's cool, but it was just kind of like I was like, oh, I need this knob, and then somebody was talking about, does anyone know of a good knob control somewhere? And I was like,
Yeah, his name's Chris Coyer.
yeah.
Just kidding, Chris.
Does anyone know of a good knob? Yeah. Take off, eh?
All right, so you're doing the invisible route where you're like, I want the interactions of this thing and nothing about how it looks. So that's kind of what I call that, like that proxy one. You've hidden it. It still gets all the keyboard accessibility, the arrow keys, all of the niceties, except you just remap all of the values to a custom control of your own. I think that's a strong strategy. Actually, it gets you out of a lot of the hairy, thorny. What other fun words that are things that are undesirable?
Well, actually,
hairy,
I feel like this is a good moment because you just introduced, like, I think for someone who is, bad at CSS listening, the concept that I think is awesome. You have to clarify is that you're basically saying in order to map accessibility or just to leverage the browser, you inject this DOM into the browser, make it go away, but then you sort of puppet it behind the scenes and you give it some inputs, and then it will give you some outputs, and you have to feed them back to whatever your visual control is. And then also do some ARIA based things. So that stuff goes away when screen readers come to, and it just deals with the regular one. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like checkbox. People have been doing that with checkbox for years, right? Exactly. You hide it and you take over. Yeah.
And for my like guitar knob, it's just an input range with 0 to 1, right? The min and max. And then all I'm doing is I'm doing setting a CSS custom variable turn, and I'm turning it 0 to 1. And so like it's
genius.
So it's like just rotate 0.3 turn or whatever, and it's pretty cool. So
I think that
does it go to 11? Does it go to 11?
I'll make a custom one for you that goes to 11. So you can actually set steps. So I think you set 10, it goes to 11 because aforementioned 0.
Right.
Yeah.
Off by 1.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's just such an interesting thing to point out, because I think when you first start with CSS and you see like a beautifully styled drop-down list or range selector in this case, or checkboxes even, and you're like, forms, I think, is one of those areas where you get really excited about it as like a CSS developer, a front-end developer. You see like a beautiful form with great interactions and validations, and you're like, I want to do that. Or it's like that typical UI kit where you just see like in a vacuum this beautifully organized bit of UI that's really doing nothing but like sitting nicely on a shelf, and you're like, I want that, I want to do that. And then you go to build it, and then if you don't know to do that proxy style, you're like, where's the selector for how do I change the style for that? And then you don't know that the answer is you don't. And so you just look for hours, if not days, or just become completely demoralized. And you're like, I tried to style all of these form inputs, but I couldn't figure it out. And it's not even like you imagine there's some trick that you just don't know about. And this is really it. That's the trick you don't know about, is that you don't really use them. You do, but indirectly. Or directly, indirectly. So it's, I think that's just such an interesting concept. I think all beginning CSS developers run into this, where they're like, how do I make it look good? And you're like, yeah, okay, well, sit down.
Lower your expectations. Step one. Lower your expectations and just use accent. So there you go. So accent colors.
Yeah, actually,
you're 90% of the way there. So
Adam has beautiful. You did this demo a long time ago, because you did that one. What was it, like IO 2021? You had that live forms like workshop you did, and you covered like accent color and all that. I remember that you did a lot of. I'll need to link that. You did a lot of crazy advanced things in that workshop that you like yada over. You were like, all right, so I'm going to set the flex basis to this and then do that and that and that. And that's going to get this perfectly laid out like that. But now let's focus on accent color. And I'm like, well, no, that's the easy part. What did you just do right there?
That was a good one. That was like adaptive forms. Yeah, it did light
Yeah.
and dark.
That was a great one.
Reduced motion, lots of accessibility, really good hit areas. I was proud of that one. I thought that turned out good. It was like a settings page. You could toggle notifications and like toggle a volume or something like that.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
It looked great.
I just wish you didn't like have to go the dark web to learn how to style a form, you know, like or like an input or something like that. One day we'll get there. So.
It's gnarly. I have an open props like side thing. So I have the normalize and open props, but I have an inputs one that I've been working on for months. That basically, I want it so that you don't have to do anything. If you put an input type email, it automatically comes with the email icon. It does light and dark. If you do a search input with a data list, I draw the little chevron. It's all pretty. It's centered, and you get the whole matching everything. And it's super ambitious. And so that's why I haven't shipped it yet. It's like there's so many little things, whether it's HTML standards that are cool, that are part of an input, that I'm like, I want to empower that. Or things that are just like cross-browser doohickeys that are really hard for me to figure out and like isolate, like input type file on WebKit. I can style the button using the : WebKit button file, whatever its name is. I can't remember. I think there's a standard name and they got their weird one still. Anyway, I style it. It looks like all the other buttons. Juicy, good. And then it's covering up the text that says like, drag a file here. Yeah. And I'm like, I just want to push that text over. I don't know how to do it. I still don't know how to do it. So I got this only in WebKit. It looks like my buttons over top of the file you upload and you can't read what you dropped. And it's really frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would need JavaScript to make that nice. You would have to build a custom element for it. I mean, just to like make it nice across all browsers. Like, I don't think
it's to fill that text. Yeah, I'd have to like hide the whole unit. So we'd have to do this proxy thing, right? Hide the entire unit. So it's still a drop zone. It still gets all the events. But when you read it, I need the file name just so I can stick the text in there. It's like, come on. But I don't know. It is what it is at the same time.
Forms is interesting too, because it's super high stakes, because you're grabbing someone's like doing a chore. Like, it's like the digital equivalent of like running an errand. So it's like you stood in line, you filled out all your stuff, and then you're ready to submit. And if you screw that up, you are going to ruin someone's day. Like, they aren't just going to be frustrated. They're going to go talk about you like to a friend online. And then they're going to be like, this was awful. I had to pull up my credit card and that was downstairs. So I had to get out of my chair. And then I realized I didn't have this thing on me. I had to get my license. And then, so like forms for the most part can be really, really frustrating for a user. Whereas like if you screw up on layout, everyone's like, that looked kind of ugly, but like, I get it. The box was supposed to be over there. And it's not. But okay, moving on. Like, unless layout's like explicitly covering something up, then that's bad. But for the most part, like forms though, like the tiniest screw up literally will make someone irate with you. And I find that to be like, I don't know if there's any other like spot in CSS that's quite as infuriating as forms.
It's a showstopper, and like, and sometimes it's your fault. Like, I coded a bad. That sometimes happens. Sometimes it's like not like the Safari keyboard like jumps over your text input or something, and you're like, I don't know what to do, or like, it's I think all that's trying to get better, and I know, isn't there a new proposal for form sizing normal or something like that for text area? Didn't I see an intent to ship recently?
Oh, there was an automatically adjusting one, I think.
Yeah,
is that what you mean? Like as you type it, it'll grow type of thing?
That is one of the biggest issues, I think, with forms. That is incredibly difficult. Like, I remember having basically a long time ago having to do like really long form, like comments and something. And so you would want the text area to grow. Just, looked a lot nicer, especially on mobile. It was like incredibly important. Otherwise you were like, everything was cramped and users like scrolling up on it. And the only solution is probably like 2012. The only solution was basically like, yeah, you get to Stack Overflow and someone would be like, all right, here's a jQuery plugin that does it. And we don't really know who wrote it, but, or like, here's the raw JavaScript for it. And it looks like, reading like, Moby Dick. You're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this is how we make it get bigger. You're like, what?
Yeah. I'm a basic B. I just use like the rows attribute on a text input, text area. I just go rows 50. Let's
If you
try
keep
that.
it simple, it's
It's
fine.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you keep doing that, at least gets you somewhere rather than what I like to do is subscribe to lots of complexity and be like, we could have just used the rows attribute and it got us like 80% of the way there. And then we spent hours just to get to the last 20
Yeah.
and we don't even like it.
Oh,
I had a weird bug come through. We're using TipTap as a WYSIWYG on our
Yeah,
app,
TipTap's sweet.
Luro. I'm working on an app called Luro. But we're using TipTap, and there's somebody was like, it's jumping, like when I like delete or whatever, the thing's jumping on autosave. And that was kind of the hypothesis. I looked into it, and I couldn't get it to replicate for weeks. And then I just was like, I'm going to literally just type exactly everything I see in this like screen cap, and it was just this really long list that was taller than the screen. And that's the clue. That's what happened. So then there was so it was anytime there was like a bulleted list, and actually not just a bulleted list, a nested bulleted list that was taller than the screen. If you had a paragraph or something above it and you hit the backspace key or the delete key, the one that reverse deletes, if you hit the delete key, it tries to move the list up, and then move focus to the list.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a
focus to the middle of the list, which was bigger than the page and caused the jump. I filed an issue, not with TipTap, but with ProseMirror, and they fixed it really quick, like that night, but it's still not like filtered down through the dependency tree there. But it was just this weird issue with components, or with, I guess, third parties, but also just with like WYSIWYGs and forms and moving focus, and even then I'm like, what's right, and like who's the god of this webpage, like, and like, should a text area ever go more than the height of the page, or should it always like have like a sticky bottom one rem? And I'm just like, it has there's all these things you can do and try, but like I can't spend like months on like a text area. I just like,
or can you?
Well, I spend a good day at least, but it's just, man, like, I guess, yeah, if you're WordPress, you should definitely spend more than a day.
Yeah.
You should spend a month on your editor, but I don't know. It's hard. That stuff's hard. Like you said,
it's hard. There's a forms thing too, where like if you put required on a text input, and then you use the invalid CSS pseudo selector, it's red, and the user hasn't even done anything.
Right.
Like, how annoying is that when you load a form and it's like, you're already wrong. You're like, I haven't done shit yet. Get out of my face, And then like the solution is out of control, where you're like, okay, well, I'll target inputs. I'll say not focus visible, not placeholder shown, invalid. And you're like, this is definitely readable. I'm definitely going to come back to this and know exactly what my intent was. But now we have user invalid. Oh, so Chrome's about to show up late to this. User invalid and user valid, where it's if you've ever used Angular, any of these form things that do like a dirty invalid or whatever, which means the users touched it, we're going to get that for free. So you can kind of get rid of a lot of that stuff.
That is nice.
You can target it as user invalid, and it won't be read until they've made it dirty. So that's fun.
That is, yeah. I would say Angular was really great with this early on. I mean, a lot of ones I used to use Knockout way back in the day had stuff with this as well. But yeah, anytime you get any like is dirty, it's like a lifeline. But then you're kind of like, how much? If you're just building a simple form, like if you're already in the Angular world or in whatever world you're in, that's awesome. But if you're like, hey, David, we need you to build this form on this page. There's just HTML, or it's just built with all server side generated stuff. And you're like, oh, do I have to reinvent the internet to do is dirty? Yeah, yes, you do.
Yeah. No. Well, and I had a workaround for this a long time. I'm glad it shipped finally. When's it ship? Does it ship in 117?
It's coming up
already?
soon. So I just found bugs in it yesterday. Joey, the
So
dev,
it's
was
dirty.
like, yeah, he's like ready to go, and I'm like, I found weird things. I don't know if it's your fault, and he goes, that's my fault. Yeah, I'm gonna go fix it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, good
It's in
for finding
Canary.
bugs. We're good. That's good. So I like figured out a way. Like I wanted to use a native HTML validation because again, pain point. Like, and another pain point. I'd like to style those
Style it,
errors.
dude. I'm on it internally.
on it?
Also,
Good.
same
Okay.
thing with range. I'm like, if y'all are gonna start opening up or even creating new components, I'm like, don't make a new component unless the ones you already shipped are good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's make the ones we have good. But I feel like you just eliminate a whole class of problems without like another validation library in there, you know? So anyway, I was like, let's just do this and came up with like a 6-line JavaScript, you know, it's just like, instead of like, if I detect like an error, right? Or like, you know, there's a check validity function or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we'll just check validity and then we'll like go and, you know, on submit, check validity, stop, prevent default if it doesn't work. And then we'll add a class like, hey, there was errors class. And then, hey, there was errors : invalid. Then we style it with the red outline.
Mm-hmm.
There's a weirdest, and this is where HTML gets weird. If the invalid event triggers first, like, so it pre-flights and does invalid, and then it'll never hit submit if there's like an invalid in there. So like it fires the invalid event and then just says, I don't fire the so you have to actually listen for this weird invalid event rather than the submit event. And I learned that the hard way. But yeah, anyway, it's just a weird, like I didn't even know like you could stop the submit. Like I thought like forms just kind of went for it or whatever, or secretly ran check validity and then quit or whatever. But I don't know.
Send your complaints to Randy Standards. You know,
Yeah, I guess we could send it that way.
he seems like a nice man.
He's very passionate about HTML. And oh my god, you're not gonna believe this. He's like,
No way.
He's here.
No way.
1 second. 1 second.
Oh, yeah, brother. I've been going coast to coast, signing autographs and holding babies, and I just came here to say HTML is the way. Oh, yeah, brother.
So he's got to go. I don't know. That's
He was so kind.
That was epic. It's a good soundbite right there.
He loves HTML. He's big. He writes his websites in all H1s. It's good.
He's got the biggest DOM. His DOM is huge.
24-inch pythons, brother. Oh, yeah.
It's just like I make a baby look like a peanut when I'm giving it a kiss because my arms are just so big.
Oh, yeah, brother.
Oh man, that's good stuff.
Oh,
Snap into a slim dom. Oh, yeah.
that brings back. Oh my god, that's like childhood all over again.
Slim Jims, yeah. I mean, my kids will house a Slim Jim or whatever the organic Whole Foods equivalent is.
Well, you're not feeding your kids traditional Slim Jims. Let's be real. It's 2023.
No, I mean, as an involved parent, you care about their bathrooms way too much. But Slim Jim is just what a product. Just a.
Why did we want it? Why did the guy in our belly causing a ruckus with a big flat top inspire us to go eat that food? It looked more like, hey, you eat this, it's going to put a wild man in your belly and some shit's going to go down. So,
it's got to be a product they made to like fix cars, you know, like hey guys, we have to oil the inside of this like tubing, and so we'll just take this greasy stick and just like that's the only way to do it, guys. Hey, have you ever tried eating one of these things? No. Oh yeah, man. It's made of rubber, but it's really good with all that orange grease on it. Okay. I'll
Why do we
try
have to
it.
step into it? You know, like what does that even mean? To step into a Slim Jim. I'm like, how big is a Slim
I
Jim?
think it
Is it
was
like a
snap
tree?
into it. You had to like
Yeah,
snap into it,
snap into it.
Oh, it was snap into us.
but those don't snap.
They don't. Yeah, I didn't get that either. I was like, this is a pretty. It doesn't break. Do you even when you get it and like chewing it, you're like,
No, yeah. Even like a vice grip could not like pry that thing apart. And oh man,
I bet they're just used as swords now for cosplay. You know,
oh yeah, because they had the epically big ones as well. Because they're like, sales have been pretty good on the normal ones, but what if?
what
What
if?
if? What if you
6 foot
really
Slim
$20
Jim. It just
yeah.
unrolls as you eat it. You know.
Yeah, it's on one of those big things they put like coaxial cable on it, like
Yeah.
the big like spindles.
Oh, licorice rope, but it's Slim Jim rope.
Yuck! Oh man!
Oh my God.
Yikes.
I got a bellyache just thinking about it.
Drinking a
Wow.
Coke through it. That's,
Hey, we all survived though, right? You think about them, like all the junk and stuff I ate, and like my kids they have 1/10 of that,
Oh yeah.
and like they're even disinterested sometimes. We're like, here's like a cool sweet, and they're like, that's too much sugar. I'm like, what? When I
Yeah.
was a kid, I don't know. I didn't care. Is it acid? I'll eat that. You know, how's it going to do in my belly? I'll be fine. Cool. I'll try it.
You don't have a
it's weird.
steady diet of Gushers and Fruit by the Foot and Slim Jims and with Mountain Dew to wash it all down. What is wrong with you?
Dude, seriously, eating Eggos in the morning.
whatever Sunny D was, it was like orange juice, but with extra sugar and like pancake batter or something mixed into it. I don't know.
Nice. Or Tang. What was Tang?
Yeah.
You're like, here's mystery powder. Just
Astronaut,
pour
yeah.
it.
Who was the
Astronaut
person who was like,
juice.
we all love orange juice, right? We love it. But the problem with it is it's not sweet enough. Like, like it's like someone's like, actually, that's not the problem. Like, so anyways, it's not sweet enough. We need to make orange juice, but with more sugar. Like,
Dude, my kids would probably die if I fed them a glass of the Kool-Aid I made when I was a kid.
My-
Just
Oh,
like,
totally. You're like, 1 cup? Yeah, I know I'm going to do 2.
just in like a half-gallon container, and it just oh man.
Can you believe we scooped cups of sugar and poured it in a pitcher and just like didn't even think about it? We're like, I don't know what my health is like.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I'm obese
thirsty.
now, but that's whatever. That's beside,
God.
Oh, jeez.
Well, we're bad at
what else are you
nutrition.
bad at? Yeah.
bad at nutrition.
Bad at forms. What else are we bad at?
Oh man, you know what? Well, this comes up quite a lot, and it was actually in the state of CSS, which just came out.
Yes.
Content visibility,
Yep.
never
On the decline?
Never on the decline.
Yeah.
Checks out. Never been. I can't say I've had a successful experience with it. I used it on this site. I thought perfect. I've got this bookshelf on my site. Boom, it's like 1,000 pages long, or whatever, 10 screen scrolls or whatever. I was like, this is the perfect use case. It like made the page slower, and I was like, what did I do? Like, how did I break this so bad? And then why do you gotta just like give it a fake value? You're like, it's height
Some
1,000
Yeah.
pixels, and like, is the browser like like my grandpa or something? Like, yeah, grandpa, it's 1,000. Like, and it's like, okay, it must be 1,000.
So this is
That
a
is a
perfect,
wild value though. Yep.
this is a perfect time to clarify content visibility, because I saw Chris tweeted about that too, about like, hey, content visibility is something that we really don't know anything about. And my awareness of content visibility is it's kind of like display none, but it's not. And so I haven't learned it, so I'm just gonna keep not using it. So why should I be interested in content visibility?
I think it's like loading lazy for your nodes. It's
Okay.
like you get to tell the browser like, hey, estimate this chunk of shit at like 1,000 pixels.
Lazy paint,
and then do it. And lazy paint it, and like don't worry about its actual size until it enters the viewport or gets close or whatever. And so like that's kind of where it gets a little janky. Is if you have a lot of them,
Yeah.
when the page initially loads, the scroll bar is all tiny because it's like, they're only
That-
1,000 pixels estimated. And then it goes, actuality was 2,223. And then the scroll bar jumps. And as you scroll down, it jumps again as it adjusts to reality.
So
Um,
explain to me
yeah.
why I really want this too, because like, I mean, I'm sure there's situations, but we live in a world of, performance vitals. And in performance vitals, they're like, hey, CLS, cumulative layout shift. You do not want things jumping. By the way, check out the content visibility property. That's not going to foot gun you at all. Like what is the, I can't think of I'm sure I know there are, but I cannot concretely think of a good example for it. Unless it's like the comments at the bottom of a page or something like that.
That would be one. I think
Okay.
the like quintessential use case is the HTML spec, which is a 10 megabyte document. So like below the fold sections, you just want to say, yeah, they're 1,000 pixels tall, guy. Yeah, you bet. Like, and then so then the page is only however many sections HTML is. I guess we're on HTML5, so it's only 5 sections. That's fast. So anyway, so then it's only 5,000 pixels tall, and then you actually scroll and it's 20 billion. So
it
I
helps
love
with
that.
rendering performance then, because you're still sending the HTML over the wire. So that's still happening. It's basically in any associated CSS also going along with it. And basically HTML just says, oh, as it's going through the tree, it's like, oh, we got a chunk of stuff. We don't got to worry about this. We don't have to worry about this right now. And then when it gets time, it's like, oh, okay. Oh yeah, that's right. We have that. We have those comments we got to render. Okay, let's do that now.
Yeah, it's kind of like inert styles, sort of, right? Like
Yeah, you stop the crawler, it like finds a branch that you've said is okay to have content visibility auto and with an estimate, and it'll just be like, oh, well, then I won't worry about the rest of the branches off of this branch. I'll just stop here and skip the work.
And does it estimate a size, or do you provide like a default size?
You provide the estimate, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's great, because software engineers are very good at estimating.
It's
things.
a perfect swag moment where you're like, oh, I'll just stupid wild ass guess this, just here's my swag. I'll swag 1,000 pixels. I do have a very good use case though to share with you. It is,
okay,
but it has a condition. So, for example, I've made a couple demos with, I recreated a Spotify playlist. And you think about, there could be 1,000 items or more in the playlist. The key is that the row height on each of them is fixed. So it's not an intrinsically sized element. It's a fixed height. I actually know the size precisely, and I can tell it, so it's not a swag anymore. I'm like, no, it's 100 pixels tall. Every row it's in the grid. It's this grid made them 100. So then you can be like, so now content visibility auto. And as you scroll, you do see the scroll bar jump. They've done a lot of work to mitigate it because I complained a lot, but you get a very lazy loaded virtualized list feeling as you go down the playlist and scrolling up the playlist. And so it can be superb in a scenario where the list length is known and the height is known, and you basically get this free, cheap virtualization. But I don't think a lot of people know that.
Phenomenal use case. Like that to me is, I'm like, subscribe. That is something that I'm now like putting back in the useful mind, where I'm in a meeting and someone's like, we have to render all of these rows and it's really tough and virtualization is hard. And I'm going to be like, yeah, actually you probably use content visibility for that. And they're like, what's that? And I'd be like, yeah, I totally expert mode on that in my podcast. But yes, it's this tip I came up with. It's the virtualization. Yeah, I know that one.
No, it's definitely the like, oh, I only drink Chilean Pinots.
Chilean Pinots are good. Wine from Chile is fantastic.
It is great. It is great, but it's...
I made a really embarrassing mistake yesterday. So I get access to the engineers on Chrome, right? So it's like when you have a thing that you're struggling with, you go to a coworker, you go to Twitter or Stack Overflow or something, and I can ask the engineers. And I'm supposed to only use that if it's like, it's really important.
What day do you talk to them? Just curious. What days do you talk to them?
Oh, I mean, as often as I can. Usually Monday through Wednesday. Why?
Monday through Wednesday. And about what time?
Anywhere from 9 to noon. I don't know.
9 a.m. to 12. And that's Pacific?
PST. Yep.
So
I'm
about
scared.
10:30 Central Time is your 8:30 Pacific. I could maybe just suggest some things. Okay, that's great. That's a good time. Okay.
Hey, your blog posts are very good. In fact, I referenced your blog post for your wants for 2023. You had relative color syntax in there, which we just did our intent to ship this last week. And
Sweet.
in the intent to ship, you have to say what's developer sentiment. And they were like, "Hey, Adam, we don't know what the developer sentiment is for this feature." I'm like, "We want it bad." And they're like, "Oh, prove it." I'm like, "Okay, I'll be right back." And then 5 minutes later, I had this list of blog posts, and yours was one of them. Thank you for that.
So
See, that's good to hear. I mean, I tell people all the time, like, just blog your problems and like, it'll get upstream, maybe, like, or maybe not, but like, if you have a weird problem, it might not. But like this is, I don't know, that's cool. Like, I don't know, it's just like, I know Jen Simmons has run with some blog posts, upstream that through, and
Yeah, they've been doing awesome.
it's I try to get people to just like, complaining on Twitter is not going to get the job done. I mean, a little bit does.
I don't know about that.
I think like the more you can just be like, lay out something in a blog post. I mean, man.
No, it's true. It's more constructive. It's like when it's the difference between going to a GitHub repo and being like, this doesn't work when I use it, versus like, hi, I write this code right here and it came up with this error right here. And if you clone down this repository, open up this, in browser code editor, StackBlitz, Code Sandbox, what have you, CodePen, what have you, you can get that error reproduced when you click this button right here. And you're like, thank you. That saved me a lot of time.
Yeah, the like difference between like I actually have a blog post about this too. Like, for like a small company, if you can give us any details rather than
Yep.
thing no work, you're like, ugh, I don't know how you got to that place. But even like error reporting and server logs don't quite meet it. But like, if somebody's like, here is the issue, like, and here's a little reproduction of it, like, gosh, that's so valuable.
Oh yeah.
And you own it. Some
Yeah.
rich douche can't just pull down your complaint off the internet randomly.
Yeah, this year it was this year's.
Yeah,
So
you
sorry,
get to-
I interrupted your story about talking to browser
Oh
vendors,
yeah.
builders about my pet features. Go ahead.
It was more like I was using view transitions and I was animating the pop-up, which is a cool thing. I was just waiting for it to be cross-browser. I think there's a polyfill. Anyway, pop-up's cool. And I was trying to animate it with view transitions. Not the declarative way, anyway, whatever. And I was like, it's not working. You guys forgot top layer. View transitions doesn't know what top layer is or whatever. And then I hop on a call with the dev because he can't figure it out either. He's like, yeah, I should be animating. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, dude, let's look in look here, look there. And I go, oh God, I forgot the letter S on my time. The duration is
Oh yeah, you
1,
sent me that.
and it needs to
Not
be
1S.
1S.
Rip.
And I put the S there and it animated. And I looked at him and I'm like, I don't know how to give you any of this time back. I stole it from you. I'm so sorry. I was just like, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. And he's like, I'm not going to answer your calls anymore. I'm not going to find any more S's for you, man.
Like, Adam, we're going
anyway.
to turn you into a coupon system. You get so many coupons to talk to us. And I want you to really be certain with these coupons because we're only giving you 5 a quarter.
Oh! Yep.
Hey, that might be a good system. I don't know. Not saying for you, Adam, specifically, but I don't know. Hey, you get 1 token to complain about something. If it's a good complaint, you get your token back.
Before we run out of time, I really want to get into this relative color syntax that was brought up because I'm pretty sure I'm going to do my bad explanation of it because I've not used relative color syntax from the spec or from the idea of it. But from what I understand is something that we all kind of have done in any design or any sort of color adjustment is that you basically want to have a programmatic way of saying, this is a red. I actually want it to be less red and doing that more so, or like I want it to be based off of this red, but go in a different way, or I want it to be lighter, darker, or shift the hue or something like that. And because that's all I do when I create designs, you're literally just shifting certain lightness, brightness, or whatever down. Is that, and then this is sort of like having a formalized way of doing that?
Yep. And it ends up being a lot like destructuring in JavaScript. It's super cool. It's like you destructure, perform calculations on the values you destructured, and stick them back in a color, all in one line of code. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so you can be like color from whatever tomato, and
Nice.
then or like HSL from tomato, and then now you're dealing with the HSL layers, and you can lighten and darken tomato however you want based on CSS variable or whatever. And the same now that like P3 and all these lab and
Yeah.
OKLCH and all this stuff is out there, it's even more important, I feel like, because it's this like when we're talking about colors, we're not talking about the same thing anymore.
No, it's math now.
It's math, right? Like
And
it's like
geometry. Yeah.
what color function and color space are you talking about? You know, and so like if we can just be like, I'm referencing tomato, but I mean the whatever the OKLCH Rec 2020 version of tomato is, you know, and it's it's this weird sort of colors were always sort of like based on our perception of them, right? But we are truly like, even in the numbers, it's like whatever you coded it as is probably different than what I did, but we just want to translate that and move it. But I think the part that, and I'm curious if this got in there, Adam, was that the part where I'm interested in is like the like color contrast stuff. Is that going to kind of be in scope or not quite yet? Is that
So the contrast function is still in Canary as it was engineered last year. Same with Safari and Tech Preview. You can go try out color contrast there. That function has unfortunately not made large progress. There was progress a couple weeks ago. Nicole Sullivan was able to convince the working group something that I wasn't, which is let the browser choose the algorithm that determines the contrast. So, and then she also pitched a simplified version that just picked black and white and didn't do any of the complex stuff yet. So it's almost like let's take some baby steps instead of trying to go for the whole meat and skedoodle. But for now, what you can do with relative color syntax is kind of you can simulate a very powerful strategy. It's not perfect, but it's called L star. And so if you think about the L channel on OKLCH or LCH or lab or any of these that are in the perceptual psi space, that's a consistent space for you. If you minus 60% off of L, you almost always pass 4.5. So that's a superpower. So you can basically be like, okay, well, given this color, break it down with syntax. You'd be like, okay, LCH from hex value red. Here's my L minus 60%, and then C and H. And so you just found a high contrasting complementary color that's still in the same hue and still saturated, but will give you the contrast that you want. I have a couple code pens that kind of show how you can build a light, dark, dim theme, all with custom properties and math and OKLCH, and it's ugly. I mean, it works, but it is not cool. And so that's like the whole reason I'm like, if we get this color contrast function, all of my junk goes away. Every single one of these pieces of junk goes away, and I can automate it in the browser. The browser can be like, what contrast do they want? Cool, I'll bump it to X. Like, are they in light or dark? I'm smart enough to know to choose between black or white. Like, this stuff it's so much more powerful and succinct as an author to say, I just need a contrasting color, than to right now, go into the L thing and make a best guess that we can with the current tools that we have.
So contrast function is like on the fly. I'm able to give it what is it? Give it like a certain desired color and a background color or something
red,
like that.
Yeah, given red, and I have a target of like AA.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it will say, like, given this background, it's, the surface it's on, this is the contrast level right here or something like that. And you can therefore use that output instead of a function to do relative color adjustment to be like, hey, this is the surface. This is the color I'm going for. This is its current one. So I need to adjust it based on that. So this is basically what Dave said. You're no longer being like, hot pink, that's fun. Color hot pink, let's move on. Now it's like, no, let's do actual calculations to make sure that we can basically guarantee that we'll have a accessible color with a contrast function, like mathematically.
And the guarantee is the part the CSS working group hates, is because no algorithm right now can guarantee it. They
so
can all,
guarantee and a
like, they
half.
don't deal with transparency. If you're over top of a gradient, they can't calculate that. There's all these edge cases, and they're like, we don't want people to get this false hope,
Got
like
it.
this thing will solve all their problems and is some magic silver bullet. Oh, silver bullets, they always come up. Um, anyway, so it isn't that. It can't be that. We don't even have the math in this world
Right.
yet to get that task done. And so they're like, punt. We'll just punt on the task because we can't confidently ship anything of maximum usability. And Nicole showed up and she's like, well, come on, just giving me black or white is actually a pretty good step. Okay. Like, and
Right.
it worked out. So
That's I hate. I don't know. I like am a fan of accessibility, but I hate it when it's like invoked or over invoked or I get the do no harm, but like preventing everyone from doing everything anything just seems like backwards. I think in most use cases it will benefit the user, like 99, but it's the one case where somebody's like, I'm going to do this, but on something semi opaque or whatever, or like, I think that's their issue is kind of what I want to say. It's like, there's a lot with like open UI and pop-ups, and what if somebody does a list box instead of a combo box? It's like,
yeah.
that's their fault, man. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know the difference. I've been making websites 20 years, barely know the difference. So like what I just sometimes I know I love smart defaults. I do think we need accessible defaults. I just like, but all I guess kind of padding, or couching we do to like prevent like somebody doing a wrong seems, I don't know. I think people are going to figure out ways to do bad things, like me with the input range. I'm doing terrible things with it. Uh, let me own that responsibility. Like, let me do the bad things.
Yeah, it's not even
But
a accessibility issue at that point. It's just, hey, this is hard, and that's it. Like, or a lot of times people will be like, well, we can't do that because of accessibility, and I'm like, actually, it's you can with accessibility. What you mean to say is that it's hard when we
yeah,
take that into account, and
yeah.
yes, and that
And
yeah, so we have to do that.
I think it just, for me, it's just, I think accessibility needs to be easy. I think like it needs to be
Right.
something all of us know how to do generally. There should always be specialists who are super good at it and can dig you out of really hard problems or surface problems you hadn't considered. I think like, but my heart of hearts is just like, we all need to be okay at it.
Yeah.
We all need to be kind of comfortable driving a screen reader, frankly. I mean, like,
Yeah.
we should all
Yeah.
be like
Yep.
kind of somewhat knowledgeable of how this all works, like, but not everybody needs to be an expert, and so I don't know. I think maybe I just undermined my whole argument of like, give me a thing to do bad things, but I just,
if you
anyway.
use the right tools though to like suss out problems, like you're talking about driving a screen reader, even just using like default built-in screen readers to multiple browsers you have, I find that you learn so much through that process. Like, actually, Adam once helped me build this very complex UI that was like looking like it was like splitting content as you hovered over it, but it was really just kind of like superimposed inverted colors on each other. But if there were any links from that content, I would have to dive into the bottom one and disable all that. And going through, and to make sure that worked, I had to go through multiple screen readers to make sure I didn't pain someone's day who's just trying to read our blog, who's like, great, I have to thumb through twice of your content because you don't know how a screen reader works. And when I go through that concept, I'm like, okay, I used all the ARIA stuff right, it like works. And I'm not like I'm not like an accessibility guru, but that was like, I don't know, to me that was not hard to just drive a screen reader and go through it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like that's exactly what most people probably just need to do. It's like, it's not that hard. You just have to try.
Yeah, I my hope is like every web developer worth their salt could use a screen reader. Any web developer worth their salt knows like I should probably use just HTML and CSS whenever possible before I slap a bunch of ARIA on this thing. And but I do it just, but I think we need just a few more tools to make everything a lot better, a lot more expressive, a lot more not cutting edge, but just I don't know, easier.
More manageable,
So,
drier.
Yeah, just-
yeah. So
yeah.
relative color syntax is it's gonna give us a stepping stone towards that. So yeah, just everyone out there, like OKLCH and doing the math on L is totally decent. And sometimes it's 61%, sometimes it's 58. So there is some wiggle room amongst hues, but it's generally very reliable. I did want to mention a couple of other color things before we bounce. One of them is that I have an Open Props blog post where I share the future of color palettes and Open Props with relative color syntax. I've been waiting for the syntax to drop for this to sort of be something a release, but you would go in there and just set your brand, and I build you an entire 15-step color palette off of your brand from light to dark for you to handle the dark theme and a light theme. So I'm not going to give you just 9. I don't find those are enough. I give you 15. So I thought that was really cool. And then the other color thing that this is just, I was so amused at this last night. My wife goes, "Hey, the color of that over there is goldenrod." I was like, what did you just say? She's like, goldenrod. I was like, you know that color? That color is like a laughing stock in CSS. And she's like, why? And I'm like, well, there's a couple reasons. One of them is that for some reason we have 4 different goldenrods and they're all useless. We've got like light goldenrod, pale goldenrod, and you're just like, what are these doing here? So we went on this like tangent last night. My wife's looking at crayon boxes because she knew it from crayon boxes, and then looking at the color in CSS as a named property. And anyway, it was really funny. I was like having a conversation about goldenrod and CSS with my partner last night.
Classic color.
I love the colors, all the colors. Tomato, goldenrod, seafoam.
Seafoam is a classic. Yeah, I always forget about seafoam, and then every time I do, I'm like, why do I forget about that one? It's like the best one.
Best one.
Yeah, bisque, cerulean,
Wheat.
Yes, I forget about wheat too, but that's probably for the best.
Wheat.
Oh, wheat. Say
so
what
good.
way?
Well, David, you want to close this out? I feel like that was so much fun. That was like might be our most informative one yet.
I do. I like it. I always try to like, just for the other people, not for my own sake. I know these topics very well, so I have to put the questions in of what those things are. So everybody knows what they are.
Appreciate your service.
Yeah. I just try. So yeah, that was amazing. We covered lots of good stuff. Forms. We did relative color syntax. We did Slim Jims. That was good. I like that.
Good 15-minute segment on that.
Really gonna make sure to highlight that.
We had 2 guests today because Macho Man Randy Standards showed up.
It's true. Wow, what an action-packed episode. So, Dave, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all the things that you're bad at CSS with, because that's the journey that we're on. We all have to understand that no matter how much you grow and understand and know with CSS, you got to stay humble because it's growing faster than you can. So thank you. And we will see you all on the next one.
Visit Bad at CSO.